Hello, everyone, and welcome inside a new episode of That Movie Is Ours Now. This is episode 5. That's Spider Man, that's a one handed Morgan Freeman bobblehead, and my name is David Sugarman. That Movie Is Ours Now is the podcast that's all about talking to interesting people about the different movies that have changed, affected, impacted their lives in some way, big or small. Now, if you don't already know, I live in a town called Mandan, North Dakota. And when you think about the crossover between North Dakota and great film, the conversation sort of starts and ends at the movie Fargo. There's the television show Fargo as well, which I haven't seen, but I have heard only really good things about. And I'm a big fan of the movie for sure.
Ma'am, I answered your question. I answered the darn... I'm cooperating here.
But our guest today is determined to further that conversation for North Dakota. He is one of the co-founders of the North Dakota Film Society. His name is Scottie Knollin. So we have a great conversation with Scottie lined up about his decision to move to Fargo from Atlanta a few years ago, about some of the awesome run-ins that he has had on a couple of really big-time sets. I won't give too much away, but we'll have some chats about run-ins with Zach Galifianakis, Robert Downey Jr., and a couple of more really fun big names and big productions that Scottie has had a small hand in making possible. And of course, his desire to make a film society here in North Dakota for film lovers and cinephiles like me, and hopefully probably you, to enjoy here in the Peace Garden State. And we'll talk about some of his favorites. A classic that we are going to talk a lot about is The Wizard of Oz. So you'll see the man behind the curtain today of the North Dakota Film Society, Scottie Knollin. So I don't want to take too much more time here. This was one of my favorite conversations that we have had so far. We will cover all the things we talked about, some of the theater and movie culture, filmmakers here in North Dakota. It is an absolute blast. It is episode 5 of That Movie Is Ours Now with Scottie Knollin.
You're that spider guy.
Spider bed.
Huh?
Spider bed.
You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
And here he is, Scottie Knollin, co-founder of the North Dakota Film Society. Scottie, thanks for helping us out today, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I love the intro.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And those are some of my favorites. We're going to learn a lot about yours. So first of all, Film Society off the bat, it sounds fancy and important, but what does it actually mean? What is the function of a film society, and more specifically, the North Dakota Film Society, which, as I'm sure you'll tell us, is not very old. It's pretty new.
Yeah, and so the easiest way to answer that is we're still trying to figure out everything. We started in December 2019, so of course all the plans we had for 2020 got moved to the side when the little pandemic started. But it really grew out of this place of me, a new person to Fargo and to North Dakota, wanting to kind of find a community of people who appreciated the art of filmmaking as much as I did.
No way! We have to talk about it!
Yeah, well, my memory is kind of hazy.
We have to talk about every scene, man!
I've done a lot of writing in the film industry world and did some stuff on sets back in the day. And I wanted to find that community of people here. I knew it had to exist. I just couldn't find a place that kind of had everyone linked together. So I did what I have learned is one of the best things to do in life is when you can't find something, you just make it. And so I worked together with a person here in Fargo, and we made this really, really cool group of people who represent different factions of the industry. And we're trying to find ways to make filmmaking in North Dakota as impactful as possible and be a voice to the rest of the industry around the world from this place called North Dakota.
So what are some of the things that the Film Society does to promote movies, promote the theater industry in North Dakota and filmmaking in the state as well?
Yeah, so by creating this network for filmmakers, a lot of our membership, we have about 27 members. A lot of them are filmmakers in the state. creating this network to allow them to communicate with each other, find things that they need, and maybe they can be the resource for the others. And also serving as this kind of conduit for the greater industry. We had some success with some producers out in LA looking for filmmakers here. They were creating an anthology of horror films called the United States of Horror. And they just we don't have a film office in North Dakota, and they hadn't been able to really find a way to connect with filmmakers here. And so naturally, when they Googled it, we popped up, and we seemed kind of like our version of a film office for the state. And we were able to link some North Dakota filmmakers together whose film is going to be a part of this anthology, which is really great. And then from a theater standpoint, North Dakota is a really unique place that the majority of the movie theaters and movie houses across the state are independently owned. We only have a very, very small few that are actually managed by, Marcus Theaters or Regal, large movie house companies. So finding a way to help these theaters continue to be these pillars of art in their small communities is something that's kind of the next iteration of what we hope to do. So we have a place on our website now that lists every movie theater that we know of in the entire state, contact info. And then what we're going to work on with that is then try to start building some bridges with these theaters and maybe offer them some marketing support, or maybe here's like a little brand guide that they can use to then funnel through what they're doing to kind of bring them into the new century, into the next iteration of whatever it may be, because our communities are so spread out, making sure they still have access to the amazing things that are being produced each year is really important.
Yeah, I'm lucky in Bismarck. I go to the Grand all the time. Yeah. It's a great local theater. So if you're in the Bismarck Mandan area, definitely check out the Grand. Before we dive into your love of movies and some of the work that you've done on film sets, if you're in the state of North Dakota, what's one maybe gem of a movie theater that's tucked away in one of those really small one-horse towns that if you find yourself in the area, I travel a lot for my job throughout the state, where's one you think you should try?
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a sucker for branding. And up in Cavalier, there's a beautiful theater that has just this amazing marquee. So if you want pictures of that, amazing. As far as one to make sure you're visiting in Lisbon, North Dakota, is what they say is the longest continually running movie theater in the country, which is amazing. That's here in North Dakota. And that's called the Lyric Theater down in Lisbon, North Dakota, about an hour or so south of Fargo. And so that's just a neat little part of movie history. I think the pandemic was the first time they ever had to officially close their doors for an extended amount of time. But it's cool that piece of film history is right here in our state.
So I want to get into a little bit of your background. So you have worked on a couple of sets, I know, in the Atlanta area, which is where you came from before you made the move to Fargo. So what sets were you working on, and to what extent were you involved? What was your role?
Yeah, I've been a huge film person since I was a really small kid. My family took me. We went to see Dances with Wolves in theaters when I was like 4 or 5. And as a little kid, that was my favorite movie, which is a weird favorite movie for a little 5-year-old.
A little bit.
But something about the art of storytelling in that way just captivated me as a kid. And I've just found that to be kind of the through line through my career, my personal life, just everything I like to do is wrapped up in this idea of telling really unique and impactful stories. And so when I went to college, it was natural that I was trying to find an avenue for that. And so post-college, it was right when filming was really taking off in Atlanta, and Atlanta was kind of on its way to become the kind of second Hollywood. So the first set I ever worked on was the movie We Are Marshall, and I was just an extra in the crowd. My first time ever kind of just seeing the whole process in person, which was really, really neat. And just to kind of learn some of the little movie magic they throw in there for all the crowd scenes. There were only about 15 of us there on filming day, and then they would move us around the stadium and change how we're sitting next to each other, and then digitally, throw that up in the background to make this full stadium of football fans, which was.
So if I look closely in We Are Marshall, is there like 8 Scottie Knollins scattered throughout
all over the place? Yeah. It was like an amazing experience. I in my mind, I just figured that anytime you see a scene like that, it's just thousands of people, and to see the magic that it took to bring that to life was, I don't know, really amazing, and definitely kind of kept me motivated and going.
How does one, because even as an extra, it's so competitive. Everybody wants to have, their foot in show business to, that might go to film school or have those dreams. So how did you stumble onto the set of a pretty big film, film helmed by Matthew McConaughey?
At the time, especially in Atlanta, things were a little different. The internet was even a little different. And it was just a listing on Craigslist. And it was kind of first this extra casting company that was trying to get its foot, in the door in Atlanta. And so they just threw this big thing out there. But through getting to know them and networking with them, that led to other extra work for about a year. And then that led into doing more behind the scenes things. And it really just became, the better you built your network, the better the opportunities would be there, because everyone is hustling for that next gig. And so the more friends you made, you hear about what gigs are coming up. And I was able to build about 2 or 3 years of my life around these kind of ongoing, 1 week I'm working on Vampire Diaries in a high school of vampires. And the next week I'm across the street working on Teen Wolf, which was really funny that they had these 2 fake high schools on the same street in Atlanta, with werewolves and vampires. But it was just, I don't know, a really unique experience that all became an opportunity that I was able to take because of just, networking and meeting people.
What was the biggest pinch me moment on one of these sets where you sort of looked around and couldn't believe that you were where you were, even in an extras role?
Yeah. I would say my biggest claim to fame, and the one my friends love to talk about to other people, is on the movie Due Date, I was Zach Galifianakis' photo double. So anytime in that movie, when there's a faraway shot or a shot of a car driving, it's actually me and a fake Robert Downey Jr. filming those scenes, because it was a lot cheaper to pay us, to be there every day. But I had to get my hair permed. I wore a fake beard every day on set, but it was really cool because my very first day there, I got a trailer on set, and
How about that?
Yeah, we worked on that movie for about 3 months. I worked on that film, and I had a trailer every day. And I would, come out of the trailer when I don't have a scene going on, and Robert Downey Jr. is, standing out there smoking a cigarette. Or a lot of days I'd be in the makeup chair sitting next to Zach Galifianakis while they're making sure we look close enough alike. And then one of these days, I wasn't planning on driving a car because we were supposed to be just doing a static shot. And the sunset was so beautiful, they wanted to get a shot of the car driving by. And they didn't have time to get the fake Robert Downey Jr. onto set. So he volunteered to just sit in the car as a fake version of himself. And I was panicked the whole time because we're driving down this interstate in Atlanta. We have a PA laying in the floorboard in the back seat, telling me to drive faster or slower. And I'm sitting here with fake glasses on, trying to drive, keep everything going. And the whole time I'm like, I'm going to crash and kill Robert Downey Jr.
Don't kill Iron Man.
Exactly.
So I decided that you just died, pal.
Luckily that didn't happen. But that was definitely, that whole experience of that film was, I just had never experienced anything like that.
That's awesome. That's incredible. I want to go back to the beginning with you a little bit to where this love of movies started. When you sent to me some of your favorites, a lot of oldies. Wizard of Oz, of course, a classic. City Lights gets queued up for me to watch here in the next few days. I want to get to. Yeah. What is it about those old films? Because obviously so much has changed in the industry with effects and visuals and acting since then. What is it about some of those really old classics that stick with you now, even if visually they're a little dated?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with that. I think part of the appeal is the movie making magic of it and seeing how the pieces come together. Even as a kid, I remember I'd seen Wizard of Oz multiple times and was terrified by it, but I loved it at the same time. And I remember being probably 9 or 10 when you're watching the movie and you can kind of tell where there's a backdrop and that Oz isn't real. And I think in that moment made the decision that even though I could tell that Dorothy's skipping down a yellow brick road to nothing, I was just going to pretend that it was still something. And I think that's what kind of makes film work. When you decide to lock in for the ride of it all, you just let yourself pretend it's all real, and it makes it really impactful. And then you get to really experience what the story really is about. And I also just love film history. And so getting to watch those things and see how practical effects, how did they pull this off? Seeing some of the old Charlie Chaplin, just camera tricks and everything to make sure his roller skating, works. And it's just amazing to see what they had to do to pull off the things that, even though today, yes, CGI is also a lot of work, but it's a different kind of art now than it used to be. If you look at something like Jurassic Park versus Jurassic World, they both can be thrilling and fun, but there's something so special about Jurassic Park and how real those dinosaurs seem. You can't really replicate that.
As you watch movies today, what are, I guess, some movies that you think capture that same feeling for you that are maybe more recent that people are watching today, that, okay, everything's been updated, but this captures the feel of maybe that old Hollywood, if you want to call it that, for you?
Yeah, I think there's some really fun new filmmakers coming out. I just saw the other day, I just watched Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. And I thought it was such a unique take on that style of horror filmmaking, that even though the story and the twists were maybe not new, it was the way it decided to tell the story in such a new and fresh way. And it felt very real in the moment, that I was really impressed by that. I also just love the idea of creating these worlds and these environments. And I think Terrence Malick is a master at that, especially in the past decade and a half. The Tree of Life, I was really floored by that one, mostly because of the filmmaking techniques he took, where he was just kind of creating and allowing this world to exist and just turning these cameras on. And there's this great shot in the movie of Jessica Chastain with the butterfly. And that was just an organic thing that happened on the set while the camera happened to be rolling. And that's just, to be able to create that kind of atmosphere where everything is real in that space. I feel like that's hard to reproduce. And if you over-engineer it, it takes away some of that rawness and that reality to the story you're telling. And that's where I think we get a lot of a miss sometimes with some of the things that are created, where it just becomes too much about the effect and less about just the basicness of which you want to create a story,
Yeah, when you find that balance of the spectacle and the story, it's at its best. But it's a hard line to draw, especially with, and I love them, but all the superhero movies made today and different things in that realm for sure.
And that's the thing with it being like an industry. I know it's about business, it's show business, but that can be something that can be a little disheartening as someone who loves film. When you can see a move like we've all seen what Warner Brothers and Discovery have been doing lately with their slate of projects, and it starts to feel much like these are products and not a piece of art that artists are working on. And that gets a little, that's not fun to see, but at the same time, I get it. People have to make money,
Absolutely. And, I know a lot of people have been talking about Batgirl, of course, being canceled, and, the sort of Brendan Fraser renaissance that we're having that has, got robbed a little bit from us. I am very much looking forward to The Whale, though.
Yeah.
That is at the top of my list. I love Aronofsky. Wrestler is one of my favorites ever. Really I've really high hopes. That's probably my biggest sort of at least serious one that I'm looking forward to over the next few months. So I want to touch on just like, I'm a sports broadcaster when I'm not here. At least that's what pays my bills. And like a lot of guys, I was in front of the TV or playing video games and kind of doing it to myself and broadcasting. You did a little bit of that with yourself. I found out putting on plays and making your little brother do a couple things. And I wanted to get some details. You left it vague on your website about an onset injury to your brother. Tell me about your tyrannical directorial methods that were putting actors in danger.
Yeah, it's all about getting the shot, right? No, he was definitely game for anything I would do, and sometimes to his own detriment. And we had this one day where we were trying to create this almost like a stuntman scenario. And in my mind, our driveway had a little bit of a downgrade. And I thought if I get him to lay down and if I'm going fast enough, in my mind, it worked that if I pulled up on the front tire and then back on the back tire quick enough, I'd be able just to go right over him and it would be amazing. So we tried it. Of course, that didn't happen. I just literally ran over him. And then he cried a little bit. I did the whole brother thing where I was like, don't tell mom. And I was like, I think if we do it again, I go a little faster, I can get it. So he lays down. Same thing happens.
You went back.
He went back, and then he decided
Oh.
to go in and tell mom. And it was one of the most delicious things. We still talk about it today because instead of me getting in trouble, he got in trouble for being stupid enough to lay down the second time. So our family loves that story because I walked away without getting in trouble. So
Genuinely did mess up something in my
We don't
arm.
care. We love that shot.
Is the shot on like VHS or recorded somewhere?
it's got to be somewhere. Yeah, that would be amazing to find.
I want to go back, talk about that's certainly a practical effect. No CGI there. Wizard of Oz, I think one that I wanted to circle back to because that's such a famous one that, everybody has seen and it gets spoofed or paid homage to so much. I'm a big Scrubs fan. They did an episode, even like kid shows. There was a SpongeBob episode that I remember just did Oz. Is there one that you like that is either whether it's a remake or a spoof or a tribute to? Because there's so many good ones for classic films like that.
Ooh, that is a great question. I think for me, what seems to be the best use of what made Wizard of Oz special is either finding ways to incorporate the film itself into your storytelling. Like I know the movie Australia isn't maybe Bob Norman's best movie, but I love the little through line of the magic of people seeing the Wizard of Oz for the first time, how that impacts their lives. Cause I feel like that's probably one of those movies that everyone has had that moment when they've finally seen it as a kid and you're just kind of surprised by it all. And then I also like the really subtle kind of references to it of this like search for home and family and what that means. And that's kind of also been a through line of mine creatively. Even how I got to Fargo was just I used to do these solo road trips across the country and I wrote about them. I published a book about my solo travels. And the whole point of the book, the through line of that was this kind of search for home. And is home always the place you're from or is it the place you're at? Is it the people that the family you're born into? Or is it the family or the community that you create? And I think the answer to that is always changing for me in the different chapters of my life. And I found that in movies, like things like The Tree of Life, I think has a little bit of that search for home and meaning that I don't know that we would have that Terrence Malick story told that way if, he hadn't been influenced maybe at some point in his life by a movie like The Wizard of Oz that just so perfectly, I think the reason it stands the test of time is because it so perfectly captures that feeling of hopelessness, but hope is out there and you're trying to find it in whatever's around you.
You're definitely a writer. You definitely got away with words. I love it. So you mentioned you go on these road trips and you're looking to sort of find yourself and find new things. Is that how you ended up in North Dakota? Because present company included, not everybody always seeks out North Dakota. I'm from New Jersey, came here for the job and have found some wonderful things here. Was that sort of your way in? You were looking for just a new challenge, new way of life, new something?
Yeah, kind of. I had born and raised in Atlanta, grown up there. And my job, my last job there had opened the door for me to move to LA, which is a place that I always wanted to be, just to be kind of like in, Hollywood and where it's all made. And I was there for a while and then just kind of hit a point where like you said, I wanted a new challenge. I wanted something new for this chapter of my life. The thing that motivated me on my travels was to see what life was like in different places. Without doing that, I probably never would have had a reason to ever even come to the Dakotas, but it was on my list to I want to visit all the states. I want to see how do people live in these places that seem so foreign to me. And I had come through on a road trip once. I was just here for half of a day and it was charming enough that I knew I wanted to come back. And so a few years later, when I realized I was ready for something new outside of LA, I started making a list of the places that would be interesting for me to maybe plant some roots for a while. And I also kind of made a list of my must-haves. And as I was kind of cross-referencing everything, Fargo just kept winning out. And so I blindly signed a lease at an apartment in downtown Fargo and just moved here. And it has ended up being one of the best decisions of my life.
That's awesome. You're a brave soul. Not everyone would do that on a whim. And Fargo, for those who aren't from North Dakota, Fargo is a great, fun city.
I would say I wasn't very prepared for the winter. The winter was pretty.
Yeah, a little different than LA or Atlanta, but the summers they help you out. You light out till 10 o'clock at night, so that's always good. A couple of rapids before we get you out of here. When they make the Scottie Knollin true life story, who's playing you? Is Zach Galifianakis going to return the favor?
That would be an amazing story. That would be a really good story to tell, like on the couch of like a late night show or something. That, or I mean, like I get a lot of times, like, a lot of people say Brad Pitt or Ryan Gosling. Look at this face. Yeah.
If there's a one movie ending you could change out there, what would it be, and what would you change it to?
I feel like for our generation, I'm sure a lot of people would say like Titanic or something. Like they would just make room for him on that.
There was room.
Yeah. That is a really good question. I'm actually kind of a fan of when movies don't wrap up the way you want them to.
Okay.
I love the way La La Land ends, where it's not necessarily happy, but it kind of is in a weird way. So I don't know that I would change anything. I think that I'm going to cop out on this answer and say
that's okay. And La La Land's what's one of my all-time favorites. It holds a special place in my heart. First date with my girlfriend
of
over 5 years. So we always got to circle back to that one once every year or so. And yeah, I mean, it makes me sad, but I do think the ending is always it's what it should be.
Yeah, like I said, it kind of leaves you with this idea of things aren't always the way they seem in the moment. And something better always ends up being out there. So
yeah, I always walk away from that movie thinking too, there's something to be said for lifelong love and having a partner forever, but somebody can be in your life for a short time and still have a meaningful, massive impact. Because those two, when you look at it, they're only in their life. I think the movie spans over maybe a year or two. I don't know off the top of my head, but so that's a good call, even though we're not changing it.
Yeah, we're not changing it, but
your Desert Island movie, the movie that you'd bring that it would at least take you the longest to get sick of. Presumably, you're going to get sick of anything, no matter what.
This got to be The Wizard of Oz. It's nostalgic, still captivating, and I still feel like when I watched it, I noticed something new.
Absolutely. Well, good on all three accounts. So, Scottie, if people want to find your work, if they want to find your books, if they want to get involved in the Film Society, give us some plugs, some places to look you and the Film Society up and to support it as well. I don't know if you guys take donations or have events that are open to the public. Let us know about all that.
Yeah, so you can find everything about North Dakota Film Society at northdakotafilmsociety.com. There is a place to support us if you'd like. You can see all of our members. We're actually in the process now of redoing our website. So we're excited to roll that out later this year. And our big thing every year is our end of year awards. So if you're an award season person, look for those. We announce those the first week of January every year. And then for me on Instagram, you can look up Scottie Does America. I talk a lot about my travels there. And just kind of what my life is like here in Fargo. And then go to ScottieKnollin.com for more about my books and other writing and just other fun things that are going on.
Awesome. And I guess one more thing, for people who maybe they're not in North Dakota, but you dove headfirst in and have had some great experiences. For people who maybe they don't have a film school background, or they're not really sure if the whole 9 yards of film or Hollywood or whatever it might be is in it for them, what would you suggest for people trying to get themselves involved or get a little experience in the film world, television, media in some way?
I would definitely look for other groups similar to Film Society or a Critics Association in your city or your state, because they usually have a pulse on what's happening. If you are in a state that has a film office, you can always check in there to see what kind of productions are happening. And that may be your avenue into at least getting to see what's happening on a set, or find your local kind of marketing agencies or video agencies. That's a very, very localized way to find a really small experience on a smaller set and just get to see what goes into lighting and cameras and booking talent and kind of shadowing those things.
Scottie, this was absolutely awesome. I appreciate you taking a few minutes for me today. We'll be definitely exploring some different movie theaters when I get the time here over the next few months. So, Scottie, thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon. This has been another episode of That Movie Is Ours Now with Scottie Knollin.
Thank you.
Guess I'll see you in the movies.